Wonderful. Thank you. Lovely to see many familiar faces. Happy to be practicing with you this morning, and also welcome those of you who are joining us over live stream. And thank you. And so I've been thinking about this topic a little bit on and off. I think I have set this topic for a talk maybe a year ago, so things kept getting changed and delayed, and so we'll see what we've got today. So unconditional love. We think about love, and sometimes the word love, when we talk about it, we automatically think about it in terms of romantic love, right? And the love here we're talking about is not just romantic love between people who are romantically involved. It also includes the relationship, other relationship we have in our life, like love we have for our parents, for our children, for our siblings, love for our co-worker, our friends, our neighbor, and also love for people we may not really know very well. In fact, we're talking about love for anyone we encounter in our life. And it also includes love for ourselves. And so if you notice, you're like, what? It includes myself too? I want you to notice that thought, because very often when practitioners think about cultivating compassion, unconditional love, we have a tendency to leave ourselves out without even being aware of this habit of discriminating against ourselves. Well, we too are sentient beings, and so why do we leave ourselves out? So contemplate that. So when we talk about cultivating unconditional love, we are including everyone, and everyone includes ourselves. So for some people, unconditional love for others may seem more possible. It's like I can get on board on that, and but they may think unconditional love for themselves is more difficult, often because of our tendency to judge ourselves more harshly than we judge others. Is this the case with you? Do you know you have this tendency? Are you aware of this habit? I'd like to invite you to reflect on this. In the journey of reflecting on this topic, I read through Tina Han's book. He had a book called True Love. It's a small book. It's a very valuable book. I recommend it if you haven't read it. In this book, True Love, Tina Han points out that to love is to be there. To love someone is to be truly present with this person. I want to make it front and center here, because in our daily life, in our society, sort of conditions us to think this way, especially now the holiday season. Wow, what do you do for your loved one? Go and buy them a lot of gifts. So we are conditioned to think of love as buying things for them, spending money on them, or for many of us, maybe, especially parents, we think of love, we associate love with doing things for them. I just do a lot of things for you, buy a lot of things for you. But here, Tina Han is pointing out, love is to be there, to be truly present with this person. And when we are truly present with someone, we are recognizing the presence of this person in its totality. We are open to the entire reality of this person right here with us. That means we don't only notice the positive things, we notice the negative things, or we can say we don't only notice what they do well, we also notice what they don't do so well. And we have a tendency to have a distorted view. We only allow ourselves to see certain parts of another person and ignore other aspects of that person. But here we're talking about truly present with this person. Everything that's right here, right now. When we do that, being truly present, that will allow us to notice when this person suffers. And instead of judging them, we are able to be fully here, fully present for them. And that would involve being willing to listen deeply, not just listening to the words. Sometimes when someone's suffering, we try to force them to tell us what's going on. How about listening to the silence, that which is not expressed in words? When we are fully present, we are capable of hearing that as well. And when we can do that, this allows us to give rise to this tenderness in our heart. Because we are able to recognize that this person here has this fragile and vulnerable side, even though maybe this person may try to put up a brave face a lot of the time. And we can't help but want to hold this person with a lot of tenderness and love, with our open heart. That is truly loving someone unconditionally. Now, I want you to think about it. Is it how we usually treat people we profess to love and care about? Chances are we are often not truly present and accepting of this person as they are in the moment, because very often our mind is so agitated, we don't even know that we are not fully here. I want to share this story with you. A number of years ago, I had one of the practitioners in a retreat share this experience with me. She told me that she was sitting across from her husband. They had been having some difficulty in their relationship, and she was sitting there with him. He was sitting there quietly, just facing her, being himself. And she noticed nonstop criticism of him arising in her mind. And for many years, she believed that he was not doing what he was supposed to do. He was not the person he's supposed to be. And she believed that there were problems and he needed to change for things to work. And when she saw these stream of nonstop criticism arising in her mind, and him sitting there quietly across from her, she realized that her belief that something is wrong with him, it's a habitual thought. It's just these habits of thoughts coming through in the mind. And she realized that she has been making her love conditional on his changing, on his fitting her idea of what he should be. And it had been the cause of her suffering. The whole time she thought his not changing was causing her suffering, but actually it's her habit of believing that something's wrong with him, that he's not meeting her expectation, that's causing her suffering. It was an important discovery for her, and it has transformed their relationship since then. I want to share this story with you to see if you're able to recognize some part of it, or maybe the entirety of it in your own experience. Chan practice trains our mind to be fully here. We use the meditation method to settle down the agitated mind so that we can allow this clarity, this clear awareness, and allowing ourselves to be fully here. When we are fully present, we can reconnect with our natural capacity to love unconditionally. When the mind is agitated, there is no clarity and we suffer. When we suffer, we lose contact with our natural capacity to love unconditionally. We fall into the unhelpful habits of mind when we suffer, believing that we cannot love a person or ourselves until some quote-unquote problem is solved. That's this habit of conditionality. When we get into this mode of thinking, our very conditional way of love, despite of good intentions, we create more suffering for ourselves and others. It is not in accordance with wisdom and compassion. Yet we are convinced that something is wrong with the person and that is keeping us from loving. Now, some of you may be sitting here feeling some resistance arising at the notion of unconditional love. So I'd like to take some time to help us cultivate some clarity around what loving unconditionally does not mean, because sometimes we get confused and it creates resistance. Loving someone unconditionally does not mean that we let other people abuse and walk all over us. This is the number one reason why people feel that we can't do that. So we're not talking about allowing other people to abuse and walk all over us. When we accept people for who they are in the present moment, we're also clearly aware of their action and the effect of their action. So we are not falling into the habit of being in denial, pretending that they are not causing harm to us, that they're not hurting us. In fact, letting others abuse and harm us is not in accordance with wisdom and compassion. It is not wisdom and compassion to ourselves to allow ourselves to be harmed. Now, some of you may have read some story of great bodhisattvas that, knowing that someone's trying to cause harm to them and they let them out of great compassion. Well, first of all, we have to know that we are not at that level yet. When people hurt us, we often react with vexation and we cause suffering to ourselves. And then when we suffer, we're prone to inflict harm on others. So it is actually wisdom for us to not allow others to harm us, to which we are habitually reactive with vexation. So, but we often mistake allowing others to harm us, hurt us for love sometimes. When we cause harm to others because we are suffering, it causes us to suffer more because we perpetuate hatred in our heart when we harm others. you might have experience of that. And also because of the remorse upon realizing that we have hurt other people. So it is actually suffering when we cause harm to others. So we are mistaken to believe that letting someone hurt us makes them happy, as this is a way for us to love them. It is an erroneous view. So when we know that this person we are encountering, we are in a relationship with, perhaps is habituated to harming others. Perhaps this person is abusive, has an abusive habit, perhaps because of their upbringing, or maybe they have substance abuse issues that makes it difficult for them to control their behavior. We can try to minimize the harm they can do by protecting ourselves and others from their harmful actions. In this way, even though they gave rise to hateful thoughts by habit, and try to act on it, we are not contributing to the conditions of harmful actions that they can commit. When we can be fully present and not pretending that they're not hurting us and causing harm, then we can also see how much this person suffers, because we're not busy blocking out some aspect of the present moment. When we can truly see that someone's suffering, love in our heart naturally arises. Then it is a matter of whether we allow this love to flow freely, or do we fall into the habit of getting in the way of ourselves. Now, loving someone unconditionally also does not mean that we have to agree with them. So these people we love may hold very different opinion about issues. Well, in this day and age, we are quite familiar with that, with our serious political polarization. I have encountered a lot of people who suffer a lot because their family members have very different political views. And also in our daily lives, we may have friends and family members with very different worldviews. You may have colleagues who have a very different way of doing things because of their perspective, and we disagree with them. And what we can do is that we can listen, truly listen to them, and understand where they are coming from, and put ourselves in their shoes. That's what Master Sheng Yen often taught us. Put ourselves in the other person's position. And when we do that sincerely, we may realize that well, if we have the background and are exposed to the views and perspectives that they have, maybe we will think like them and act like them. So, and this allows us to be less judgmental of people who have different views from ourselves. Because oftentimes we may think that I can't believe people think that. I can't believe people do that, and judge them in our mind as maybe there's something somewhat defective, some inferior, something's wrong with them. And without our noticing, we are actually seeing them as less deserving of love. So listening and seeing things from their perspective helps to keep us from demonizing these people. Now, it does not mean that we have to adopt their worldview and perspective, their beliefs. It does help us to see that our views and beliefs are the coming together of causes and conditions, and thus allow us to appreciate that we all have different causes and conditions. And thus we have different views and perspectives and beliefs. And realizing this helps us release the idea that only people who share my belief and perspectives are acceptable and lovable, deserving of my love. Unconditional love also does not mean that we condone people's action when their actions are hurtful, harmful to themselves and others. We know clearly that harm has been done and people have been hurt. Some people mistakenly believe that loving someone unconditionally means that we defend their actions, however harmful they are to themselves and others. If we take a moment to look at what this is about, looking at this way of thinking, this reaction closely, we may notice that we're actually setting conditions for our love. Deep down, we believe that this person deserves our love only when they are perfect, when they don't make mistakes. So in order for us to continue to love this person in our mind, it would mean telling ourselves that they did not make mistake, that they did not do harmful actions that they were accused of, or that we try to twist it in our mind that what they did was not really harmful. We have seen this kind of enabling around us. Maybe we have taken part in it. And we engage in this kind of thinking and reacting because we are unaware of our habit of conditional love. And wanting to believe that we love someone no matter what by refusing to acknowledge the harm done by their actions. So we can acknowledge clearly that someone has made a terrible mistake and caused great harm, and they need to take responsibility for their action, however painful it might be. I met a practitioner telling me how painful it is to watch his son having to spend many years in prison because of something he did. Sometimes we don't want to face this pain and want to pretend that this is not happening or what this person did was not harmful. So yes, sometimes people do need to take responsibility for their action. It may mean they're losing their position of authority. It may mean them having to endure some very serious punishments, such as going to jail. And even with all this, we can see this person as lovable. We can still love this person. When we acknowledge the harm done by their action and that they need to be responsible for the consequence, we are allowing ourselves to see this person as they are and not be stuck with our idea of who we wish this person to be. In other words, we are being truly present with this person fully accepting who this person is in this moment. This is the true love that Thich Nhat Hanh was talking about in his book. So to cultivate unconditional love as a Chan practitioner, we can start off with cultivating unconditional love and kindness to ourselves, because we are the person we spend the most time with, in case you haven't noticed. And so this gives us a lot of opportunity to practice. And when we notice, what we can do is to become aware of the various aspects of this habit of conditional love and unlearn the habit of making our love for ourselves conditional. We were not born this way. We learned to make our love to ourselves conditional. And when we can love ourselves unconditionally, we are also much more capable of doing the same to others, loving them unconditionally, regardless of what they have done or how they are. So we can first start off to notice the habits, our habits of conditional love. And first we can we can pay attention to what it is like. And we may discover that maybe we have learned this habit from others. So a lot of things that we sort of got habits we have developed perhaps from being when we were very young, because we were impressionable when we were young. And maybe we have through the years heard some version of so-and-so is going to withhold affection for you if you do not do X, Y, and Z. So you may have done that to your children, if your parents, like, I'm not going to. So for example, I've heard my mother say this to her grandchild. So if you don't do this and this, so-and-so is not going to like you. So like we may have these voices in our mind that, like, you know, your dad is going to be mad if you do not finish homework before he comes home, or your favorite auntie is not going to like you if you don't eat like a good boy, or I'm not going to play with you if you do not pass your piano teacher's requirements. So we, like, the adult that we grew up with meant well, and they were trying their best to help us get our work done and develop good habits. However, somewhere along the line, we might have internalized and got this idea in our mind that we do not deserve love unless we are doing certain things. So growing up is like, unless we get good grades. I've encountered a lot of young people who really believe that I'm not deserving of love if I don't get straight A's. So do we have that habit? Now, many of you, like, you don't need to get straight A's anymore. But as we get older, the list of conditions may grow. We have created these things, these goals we must achieve. So we may think we have to lose weight, we have to meet people's expectations, we have expectations for ourselves. We may tell ourselves we have to stop doing unhealthy things. We have this idea in our mind that I don't deserve love until I stop being quote unquote bad, whatever bad it is, or until I am perfect. That means we're going to withhold love from ourselves. Are we aware of the list of conditions we hold in our minds in order to be deserving of love that we have developed over the years? Do we know what these conditions are? When we cultivate clarity of our thought habits, cultivate clear awareness of thoughts, subtle thoughts that arise in our mind moment to moment, then we can see them as they arise. We can also see these thoughts arising in a subtle way as conditions that must be fulfilled in order for us to be lovable by ourselves. So when we become familiar with these conditions we have set for ourselves, we are more able to recognize this habit as it arises. So when we make our love conditional, we may be acting out of a voice in our mind through conditioning. Now, I was talking about how we may have internalized these voices that we heard as we were little. And also we may have grown up with parents whose love for us is conditional. And while many parents are willing to sacrifice a lot for their children, they often hold certain expectations for their children, perhaps to get into good school or to have a successful career. I am a college professor. I have a lot of students who talked about the pressure of meeting expectations to become maybe to become a doctor, to become successful in their career. And parents, when their children do not meet the expectation, their inability to accept their children as they are cause them to suffer. So their inability to accept their children as they are, their inability to love them unconditionally. And when people suffer, when these parents suffer, they are prone to act in ways that are not in accordance with wisdom and compassion. And oftentimes, they may resort to withholding their attention and love from their children in a reaction to being disappointed. And oftentimes, they want to love their children. It's just they are also stuck with the habits of conditional love. And they may not even know that they are doing so. Very often, we may recognize that when we do not have clear awareness of our mind, we perpetuate unhelpful habits that cause suffering to ourselves and others without our being aware of it. That means we keep doing things that if we know that we're doing it, we wouldn't want to keep doing. So these parents may not know that they are engaging in these actions of making their love conditional, and they may not do so in explicit way verbally. It may be done in very subtle ways, the subtle withdrawal of affection. Yet children are very sensitive, and they could feel the sudden change, like there's this coldness or distance resulting from the withdrawal of affection and love. And as children, we come to believe that we don't deserve love when we fail to meet other people's expectation. And by watching this, we also learn. We learn the way that our parents love us. We also learn to make our love conditional on meeting our expectation. So we have internalized these habits. And as a Chan practitioner, we can cultivate clear awareness of this conditioning. Do we know how we have been conditioned to believe that someone, including ourselves, does not deserve love when we fail to meet some expectation? It's a thought habit. When the habit of believing that I'm not lovable when I fail to meet expectation, we can become familiar with how this thought arises. And we can, when we cultivate clear awareness of this thought arising, and we can notice it. And remember that we don't need to believe it. When we do not have clear awareness of our thought habits of conditional love, this thought arises saying that I'm not lovable because I failed to meet expectation. We just fall for that, believe the whole story. And then before we know it, we really believe that we don't deserve love. We start going down the road of being quite harsh on ourselves. And this habit of conditional love causes a lot of suffering. So people who create these conditions may mean well. They may believe, we ourselves, when we do that, may believe that withholding love will help motivate someone to improve. After all, they want our love. If I withhold what they want until they do something, I'm helping them to succeed. That's what we believe. We believe we are helping them. The reality is that even if we succeed in getting people to comply and change their behavior, it's done with a lot of anxiety of suffering because of their fear of failure, because failure is so high stake. Because for them, failure makes them unlovable. So it also generates and perpetuates the habit of fearing to fail. Because the love they want is conditional on their succeeding in doing what's expected of them. Failure to deliver would mean they don't deserve love in their mind. So this further perpetuates this habit. Underlying the habit of conditional love is perhaps a confusion in our mind due to a lack of clarity. We do need to work hard and do what is expected of us to earn good grades in school. So we say, yeah, I need to meet expectation from my teacher to earn the grade I want. And as adults, we do need to meet expectations set for us to perhaps get the job we want, or earn the promotion we are striving for, or to achieve professional success. Yes, good grades, professional success are conditional. When we did not hand in our homework in school, the teacher will not give us a good grade. So yes, and we learned that lesson well over and over again every time we got the grade that we didn't want. What may not have been made as clear to us in our development is that love does not need to be earned. Everyone deserves to be loved just the way they are. This applies to ourselves as well. To love unconditionally is the way the Buddha loves. Think about it. Can you imagine the Buddha saying, I won't love you unless you get good grade. I won't love you unless you work hard. is laughable. So, as Chan practitioners, we practice and learn from the Buddha to love unconditionally. And we need to understand that not only does our habit of conditional love cause suffering to those for whom we made our love conditional, it causes ourselves suffering because it is painful to withhold love as it goes against our natural tendency to love and fully connect. We suffer from blocking this love from freely flowing from our heart to another human being. Instead of allowing our love to flow freely, honoring the true nature of our being, our interconnectedness, recognizing fully the miracle of our encounter, our being connected in this relationship with each other in this space and time. Instead of allowing ourselves to do that, what we're doing in the habits of conditional love is to create these blocks, these checkpoints, these hoops in our heart that we have to jump through, telling ourselves that love cannot flow through until certain conditions are fulfilled. See how good we are at making our life complicated and miserable, when all we need to do is to allow our heart to open. This blocking of natural free flow of love is suffering. When we do not have clarity, we cannot see it is our habit of conditional love that is causing our suffering. Instead, we believe it's the other people not meeting our expectation who's causing our suffering. It is actually our habit of making our love conditional that's causing suffering. So as Chan practitioner, we can cultivate clarity of how we engage in this action of not allowing our love, kindness to flow freely by falling into the habit of conditional love. Unconditional love involves full acceptance of where we are now. Now, acceptance does not mean resigning to the fact that this is how we are going to be forever. But it is fully accepting and acknowledging that this is where we are in the present moment. As we can truly see that each moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. We'll notice that we don't do that. We resist this because of our habits of holding a fixed idea, a certain idea of who we are supposed to be, and judge ourselves against that idea. Are we even aware of ourselves doing that? We often do the same to other people we profess to love. We said we love this person so much. But do we know who we are loving? Do we love the actual reality of that person? Or do we love our idea of that person? When we love our idea of that person, what we do is that we dismiss the present moment reality of how that person is actually. more often than not, we see whoever is right there as something wrong, not quite the person we love, the idea of that person. And thus the habit of believing that something's wrong with that person, they need to be fixed in order for us to love. The unhelpful habit of setting conditions for our love can be unlearned. It involves being fully present with ourselves moment to moment so that we are familiar with how this habit unfolds. When we cultivate clear awareness of our thoughts, we'll notice the conditions that we are setting for ourselves in order to deserve to be loved by ourselves. So these are maybe various ways in which we feel we are not good enough. Not good enough meaning not good enough for love. So I don't know, they may be like, I wish I were a better person. Or I should be more successful. I should be more compassionate. I wish I'm a better practitioner. This thought reminds me of a story. I had a student who was always sort of like, yeah, something's wrong with my practice. I'm not like, something's wrong with me. I asked him, well, on what basis are you assessing or evaluating that something's wrong with your practice? This thought of, I wish I'm a better practitioner. And what came out was that he was comparing himself with another practitioner in his mind. He thought, well, Rebecca's like this, so like I'm not like her. So like I'm not a good enough practitioner. I pointed out to him that whatever you think Rebecca is doing, that's not Rebecca. We create ideas of other people. We hold up to judge ourselves. Whatever idea we have of another person to which we compare, that's not the reality of that person either. Are we aware of such habits? Of the habit of mistaking our idea of a person for reality and forgetting that we don't really know the person we believe is being so much better than ourselves, and using that to constantly judge ourselves, telling ourselves that we are not good enough. And this is a habit that we can unlearn when we become aware of. So these various ways we feel we are not good enough, I hope you can notice a couple keywords that they show up in. So the should, I should be this, I should be more this, I should be more patient, I should be more compassionate. So when you hear yourself should yourself, then it's like, that will help you notice, maybe I am activating this unhelpful habits. Judging ourselves, believing ourselves undeserving of love. Or I wish, so wishing ourselves to be other than who we are this moment, not accepting where we are in this moment. It does not mean we cannot improve. In fact, being stuck in the thought habit of telling ourselves, I should be this, but I'm not, and thus I'm not deserving of love, block us from cultivating clear awareness of the conditions, we can work to cultivate to go where we would like to be. So if you want to be able to practice sitting meditation more regularly, this is something you're holding against yourself, well, identify the conditions that is keeping you from doing that. And you can get to work to adjust them, to create the environment for you to be able to move in that direction. And knowing that things don't happen right away. Notice the habits of impatience. When we cultivate clear awareness of these thoughts, these conditions we set for ourselves, we notice these subtle thoughts, conditions, telling ourselves that I can love myself only when these conditions are met. The same way we believe we have to earn our promotion by performing well at our job. So we notice our habit of conflating the two instead of being able to see the difference. That yes, we do need to do what we're supposed to do to earn our promotion, but we don't need to earn love. We do not need to turn love into something conditional. We can cultivate clear awareness of these subtle thought habits. And when we notice that the thought of love being conditional, we release the conditions. In that moment, we open our heart saying to ourselves, that it doesn't matter if you're good at what you do. Doesn't matter if you worked hard or not. If you're successful or not. If you accomplish what you set out to do or not. I love you anyway. That's how we can release these conditions in that moment, to allow our heart to open and allow the love to flow freely. Releasing not just the habits of conditional love, releasing the habits of suffering. With stability and clarity of mind cultivated in meditative practice, we are more likely to notice this habit showing up. We practice remembering to come back to the present, reconnecting with the bodily sensations of walking, breathing, standing, sitting, eating. Practice remember that we can choose to allow our natural capacity to love to operate. And we don't have to follow and perpetuate the unhelpful habits of conditional love. We can open our hearts to ourselves and others. And we can see that the conditions we set may be appropriate for going to college or getting a promotion or achieving professional success or getting any goals, achieving goals we set in life. And setting goals and identifying ways to motivate ourselves to achieve them are helpful in life, but conditions are not necessary for love. And so we just love without reservation, with no strings attached. We practice doing this with ourselves over and over again. The way we practice sitting meditation, every moment we notice the mind drifting off. There's no need to get frustrated with ourselves. We love ourselves anyway. The mind drifts off. No problem. It's okay. So we can see that the time we spend in sitting meditation can be great opportunity to cultivate unconditional love for ourselves. We stay on a habit, that's good. we drift off and disconnect from method, no problem, it's good. Still love myself. And we practice this, releasing the conditions, releasing the habits of making our love for ourselves conditional. And when we can love ourselves unconditionally this way, then when we encounter others who have made mistakes, who hold different views, who are different from ourselves, whatever it is that causes us to believe we should withhold our love, we realize that no, yes, this person needs to take responsibility for the action, but it does not mean that I have to keep my love from flowing to this person. I can still be fully present with unconditional love and kindness for this person. So I hope this is helpful for you in your cultivation of unconditional love for yourself and others as by using your Chan practice. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for your wonderful talk. So I guess we still have a little bit time for Q&A. So anyone, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and our volunteer will unmute you so you can ask Rebecca a question.
Is that a hand, Harry, or you're waving hi?
Or if you want just to say hi, or I guess we can unmute everyone now. Feel free to unmute yourself and say hi.
Hi. Yes, I couldn't unmute myself, but I managed to love myself anyway. Just wanted, I'm sure something that's on people's minds when you read about some real egregious tragedy, that happens in the news, unfortunately. Can you give any advice in how, you wouldn't necessarily feel warm feelings to someone, to murderers or whatever, just some kind of guidelines that might be helpful when you're encountering really negative things in the world? Is there anything we could learn from that? Thank
you, Harry, for the question. Yes, I think yes. When we find it most difficult to give rise to unconditional love when we read about things in the news, and we do need to understand that when we read things in the news, it gives us the illusion that we know what really happened, but we don't. It gives us the illusion that we understand why people do what they do, but we don't. Everything happens with the coming together of causes and conditions, and people come to a moment of engaging in certain actions from their lifetime of conditioning, and also enabled by the situation revolving around that moment. And we convinced that if we were that person, we wouldn't do that, but we don't know. When we are in great suffering, when we are deluded by certain ideas and beliefs, we really believe them and we act them out. When we really believe that someone is the cause of my suffering and I suffer so much, I just want to get out of this suffering, and we get it into our mind that to eliminate my suffering, or maybe to eliminate someone else's suffering, is to eliminate this person. And this mode of thinking is actually very much encouraged in our culture. So we might believe that someone is inherently bad and evil. That is an erroneous view, but our news coverage tend to portray people that way. So we, as Chan practitioner, we need to practice integrating the teaching of emptiness that every moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. Yes, people do need to take responsibility for their action. Yes, there are consequences. But to believe that there is an inherently bad person going around to do evil, bad things, it is just not right view. We're forgetting the teaching of emptiness, forgetting the teaching of causes and effect. When we can remember that, then we will remember, yes, what this person does is harmful. But we also can remember that it's because suffering and our giving rise to aversion and hatred only contributes to more aversion and hatred and suffering. And it's not in accordance with wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And there, I saw the hand raised by Michelle. And after Michelle, I also received an anonymous question. So Michelle, go ahead.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for the wonderful talking and the wonderful topic. May I know the name of the book and the author?
You mean the book I was referring to?
Yeah.
So I have it right here on my desk, so I can hold it up for you. It's
great.
It's Tina Han's book called True Love.
Oh,
Beautiful
okay.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the anonymous question is, someone who I care about thinks there must be something wrong in me, even though they don't know what the problem is. This makes me feel there's really something wrong in me. How can I deal with this? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful question. And if you recall the story I told in the beginning of the talk, it has to do with our habits of suffering, that every moment we believe that something's wrong in the present moment, something's missing, something's not quite right. And it has to do with our habits of aversion and craving. And it is, we often may not even know what is missing. We may not even know what is wrong. There's just this habit, this thought habit of something's wrong, something's not quite right. And sometimes we may hold up a certain idea of the person. And we are actually not sometimes, most of the time, that's what's happening. We judge someone as being not quite right because, because we were comparing that person with our idea of that person. And we don't even know we are doing that. We do not know that we have this idea. So what's going on with the with you with your friend is that that's what your friend's doing. Your friend is judging you against some idea that they have about you. So in other words, they are in a relationship with their idea of you rather than you, the reality of you. And so it is incredibly common. I think that's what we do most of the time. It's just that we are not aware that's what we are doing. And this is why Chan practice in cultivating clear awareness of the entrenched subtle habits of our thought habits is so crucial in helping us release the habits of suffering, which in turn also will allow us to cause other people less suffering. So when we become, when we cultivate some clarity around this, then you can see that, yeah, like your friend is suffering. Your friend believes that something's wrong with you, but you don't need to believe that. Like someone convinced that something's there that is not there does not mean that. So you can have compassion for your friend, and you don't without believing, adopting your friend's belief that something's wrong with you. Now, of course, we can reflect on whether like we sometimes behave in ways that maybe is a little annoying or like being selfish. We all can improve. But like to believe that something is so wrong with us that we don't deserve love, it's an unhelpful habit that we can unlearn. So like recognize that we are sort of falling for the belief that being held by another person. Someone believes something is wrong with you, and you believe their thoughts. And when it's just a thought, it's a curious thing we do, but we fall for that quite often. And it's a habit. And so cultivating clarity of how this habit is triggered, how we begin to tell, oh yeah, she's right, you know, like something's wrong with me. We just notice this thought arising. And then as soon as we notice this thought arising, we can choose to allow it to be perpetuated going down the usual path of suffering, or to notice that, oh, it's that thought. Yeah, I don't need to believe it. And we can do it more likely by cultivating clear awareness, by cultivating stability and clarity of mind through meditative practice. I hope this is helpful for you.